Chad, is just shoot me a raw.
Well. Welcome back, everybody.
Hey, welcome back.
Hey, we got the boss with us. Bottom
That's
left.
right.
We got the boss with us.
What's up, boss?
I'm the only one with the tagline. I feel like I should take that off.
Nah, it's good.
No, it's appropriate. It's appropriate.
Yeah.
Because we've shot so many of these now, plugging the production company.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have you on with us. Now people can put a name to what we've been saying and a face with it. So there you go.
Well,
Hey,
I definitely appreciate
it. Hang on a minute. With that being said, hey, everybody, we would love for you to visit 611armory.com. That's 611armory.com. Mr. Bryan Robinson, who is the founder, owner, operator of 611 Armory right here. Yeah, right there he is right there. Yeah.
That guy.
Hey, go over there. He's got some great apparel. He's got one of his hats on now that you can see it. This one's not up on there yet, but this is going to be a special limited edition. We have 12 of these. Is that what I told you, Bryan? So we have 12 of these, and then we have another edition of the hat coming out that I'm not going to reveal what it is, but man, it is awesome, dude.
We've done a lot of really cool merch, right? Like, Dad, you've done a really good job of managing that, having done that for football teams and stuff in the past. I have never seen you walk through, you have never come in with a box of anything that you've done, and I've looked at it and been like, mine, the way that these hats went down. I was wearing it before Dad could offer. So that, Bryan, kudos to you, man. That was it's awesome.
And that's on if you can see the logo, everybody. Yeah. But anyway, but Bryan has some wonderful merch over there. He's carrying one of our shirts. And listen, everything, we made the announcement while we talked to Robert and we talked to Randy Kirby, Robert Abels and Randy Kirby, and let them know what our intentions were. As a matter of fact, guess what I have?
And what's that?
If I can find
Do tell.
I'm waiting.
And this is the point where it's
these. So that's our picture with Randy Kirby. That's far right as you're looking at this, and then Robert Abels is between Todd and Bryan. They're the ones we chose. One Kingdom because One Kingdom is specific to Whites Ferry Road Church, and it means so much to all of us. And you know, when you send your money into missions, you never know if 10% is going to the field and 90 or 80% is going to corporate office. So we know with One Kingdom exactly where that money's going. And
the other thing about that is it is gospel focused, gospel centered.
Exactly. Absolutely.
The gospel worldwide. Absolutely.
They do as much locally and domestically anytime a disaster happens as they do overseas. They have one radio. Are you holding your hand up, Chad?
No.
I'm
adjusting my camera. I got too much headspace. I'm doing that perfectionist thing again.
So anyway, listen, everybody, please go to 611armory.com. Bryan has some wonderful merchandise on there. He's got different shirts with the gospel symbol. He's got some other things on there. And he's been so gracious to partner with us in what we're doing. And I think now he's even going to try to partner and do some things with Chad through the movie industry that I've heard them talking on that. If they can come up with something. Bryan, I got to tell you, man, I don't know if you were a marketing design, if you have a degree in that or anything, but the way you come up with things, man, you've definitely got a gift.
Absolutely.
I definitely don't have a marketing degree or design. I think I have an idea of what I like and what looks good. And I just try to replicate that. So it's not obviously the gospel symbols. There's a whole story behind that. And this is not complex to put on a hat. So in that case, it just kind of does its own thing. And to Chad's point earlier, yes, you got the first hat. I was there, and I guess it's because you're the boss. And so just go.
No.
What? You got the name.
That one was just because I was greedy. I saw it. I was like,
Yeah. In fact, these hats, and there are several of these that are out of stock. So unfortunately, so it's a kind of a both sides to the coin. They're out of stock because so many people have been wearing them, including some of the people on the Unashamed podcast, Jace and Al and JD Malone, and all these people have been wearing them. So I've got a bunch coming in. So if anybody goes to the site and sees something out of stock, they should be back in shortly. But yeah, it's been kind of fun trying to keep up with stock.
Nothing wrong with
really
that.
cool.
Nothing wrong at all with that. I see it as a good problem to have.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So I wanted to Todd and I wanted to bring you two on because you attended your first WFR men's retreat this past weekend. Now, listen, folks. So when you see this, it's going to be 2 weeks post.
That's right.
Retreat, because Clay and Josh's episode that we shot at WFR will release this coming Monday, which will be, so anyway, y'all figure it out.
Nice.
When it posts, you'll see it.
That'd be September 9th.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
the ladies will just be getting back from their retreat whenever this goes up.
That's right.
And there was so much happened on that retreat from the day Todd and Zach and Hunter left, from the day Bryan drove up, and then Chad and I driving up and spending the night in Tallahassee, and then coming in the next morning, and we were all kind of all over the place. And it was just one of those, but God, no, we got to change that. It's an old but God moment.
That's right.
We were singing that song. I'm like, it's changing, but God has changed. It's old but God now.
See, I always thought that phrase came from that song. I didn't realize that you guys were saying that before.
I didn't even know that song was out there. Yep.
I didn't know the song
Todd
was
got
there.
me saying that. That came from Todd.
And actually, Billy O'Brien got me to saying it, which is another one of those WFR men's retreat connections. So,
hey, listen, everybody, we got to give Todd a round of applause. I hate throwing. But Todd is back on his laptop tonight. Everybody, he's off of the iPhone and back on.
I wish I wouldn't have clapped.
So anyway, Todd and I wanted to bring these two guys on the list. There's only so much we can talk about, not because it's like the Masonic Lodge or anything like that, but it's just there are certain aspects of things that happen at those retreats that unless you go, you really wouldn't understand what people are talking about. So it's best that some of
it's kind of like the lodge.
But
here's the
Chad,
thing.
don't say that. You're gonna get everybody shut down. You're gonna stop the revival. You're gonna get struck by lightning in the back of my house.
Their life is too short not to have a sense of humor, man.
Our director said it best at the return service on Sunday. There's nothing special.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing special is that those men that go on these retreats are taken to the feet of Jesus with men who have been to Jesus.
Right.
And that's no more or no less. And Gary put it out there the best I've heard somebody put it.
Yeah.
So let me just back up a little bit to kind of set the stage of everything that happened leading up to that. So we drive up and when I go in, I typically always go by the honey hole and say hi to John David. Remember me from my face. He generally remembers me, but anyway, we stopped by there. Todd, he was out in front of the honey hole unloading, opening up boxes, and he was drenched from head to toe. I mean, he was just soaking wet with sweat. And so I said, I figured you'd be recording. He said, well, I'm getting ready to head that way here in a minute. And I said, well, I said, well, if we go by there, will we be able to see anybody? He said, yeah. He said, if you'll just wait about 10 minutes, you can go with me. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, you got to get dressed. We'll go ahead and go over and we'll meet you there. So we drove over. Next thing we know, here comes Cy. He drives in. And before that, Bryan went in and got his honey hole hat. And we talked to Big Dave a little bit, which was really cool. And then Philip rolled in, and I had seen a picture of Philip's truck on Facebook. So I hollered at him. I said, "Hey, that rig looks a lot nicer in person than it does on Facebook." You know, Philip says, "Ah, thank you." You know? So anyway, then JD rolls in, and he says, come on in. So next thing we're inside there, and we kind of stuck our head in a little bit and said hi. And then so Chad and Bryan went ahead and walked on in to the duck call room studio, but I caught Philip outside and was talking to him about some other things. The next thing I know, when Philip and I get done talking, I stick my head in, "Hey, come on in here. We've been invited to stay." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" They said, "Yeah." So one thing led to another. We were able to witness that at a time where I've never seen Si preach the way that he did on that podcast. So we leave there, and we go over and drop the guys off at. By the way, I'm just going to say it. If Philip can, he's got to check some things through some people to make sure it's okay for him. And if it is, he's going to come on the podcast.
Awesome.
So I think that'd be awesome. Especially when I told him, he lit up, Todd. When I told him, I said, "Philip, I don't want to talk about Duck Dynasty.
Nope.
I don't want to talk about Si.
Nope.
I want to talk about your life, how discipleship has played a role in that, those who have built into your life. And I want to bring light to, or bring some awareness to the home that you work at, where you all deal with those with the children there at the Methodist home." Man, he lit up and he's taking pictures with all of us. It's funny. So anyway, we leave there.
Worst picture of me ever. I look completely lopsided.
Well, we all do.
Same.
I'm always lopsided. I don't like to be in a picture to be lopsided.
We need to upgrade Phil's camera.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how many of those he's got on his phone? I would love that. If he comes on my,
he's so funny because he puts his big arm around you. And he ain't tall as nothing. He puts his big arm around you, and then he holds his camera up and he makes himself look 7 foot tall next to you, and you somehow end up looking tiny. I'm like, I don't know how that worked.
But I'm going to tell you something, and you all probably agree. Todd, you've met Godwin. I mean, you and Godwin have had a chance to really sit down and have some good conversation and develop a relationship. But those guys are exactly they are exactly who you see on TV and on those podcasts. There's no change. They are as genuine comes.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Sorry about the pause, everybody. All right. So before we get into your all's arrival, after I dropped you all off and I left, Todd, what was the atmosphere like for you when you all rolled in and started setting? Because y'all got there Thursday morning, right, and helped them set up. And
we actually got to town Wednesday evening and went to a Bible study there on Wednesday night, which was tremendous. I mean, it was absolutely awesome. And then got up Thursday morning and went to Buck Commander Bible study at 5 a.m. Then picked up the boys from the hotel and we went and had breakfast with Colin, and then went on out to the camp and started setting up. And by 10:30 at the latest, we had everything set up, ready to roll.
Dude, I still want Colin's workout regimen. Like, that dude looks awesome.
Oh,
he is in great shape. One of the guys told me, I made a side comment mention of that, just as a tangent. He's like, this guy goes into Gold's Gym at least once a week, grabs 50-pound dumbbells and walks a mile, supposedly. I'm like, he just farmer's carries 50-pound dumbbells, 100 pounds, 50 in each arm for a mile? I need to step my game up. I'm self-conscious now.
It's easy to do. Grab a hold of them and step onto a treadmill and go to walking. So we get all that set up. I get word of things going on with y'all. And I'm like, no, I need to be here. They're having a great time. Then we get word, at some point, that John shows up at camp. in the middle of 2 different rehearsals going on, ongoing conversations that's going on. And then we get the word, hey, there's bad weather moving in. And then it starts raining. Then we start rolling things around, making accommodations that if the rain continues, then we got to do things this way or that way, which wouldn't have been right, but it worked out. We get the word that, hey, luggage is on the way. Y'all get ready to unload luggage. Then we get word that the bus is leaving. The guys are on the way. And then y'all roll in on the buses. When y'all made that turn into Camp Chioka and rolled down there and all the guys out there, where was y'all's thoughts?
Before we get there, I just want to say that while you were at camp and we were hanging out with the guys in the duck call room, I cannot tell you from the moment we pulled into the honey hole till dad dropped us off at the church, I can't tell you how many times he mentioned how much he wished that you had been with us. So that's a testament to Dad, and that you were seriously, like, you were in our at least in his thoughts. I don't know. I figured that you were having a grand old time. I not knowing what was going on. So
Right.
But just I wanted you to know that and to brag on my old man a little bit here, because it was. I mean, Bryan was there for something. It was at least 3 times, probably more than that Dad mentioned you. So kudos to you for having such an impact on my old man that no matter where he goes, he wants his Todd.
Well, that goes straight into some exposure that y'all got over this weekend of the intentional and authentic relationship that's now developed and growing among that entire group of men from that retreat exposure.
For sure. Bryan, you go first as far as your thoughts and everything.
Back up a little bit and start from arrival at the church all the way to in front of the camp building.
Okay, I'm trying to filter this so I don't, say too much. But when we when we pulled up, we take our bags in, and the guys we're swarmed. These guys grab the bags and put them off, and I'm like, okay. I'm looking around. Chad and I are talking, and this actually was the first time I got to spend time with Chad. Really getting to know him. So we sat there and had a great conversation. At some point I was thinking, there's a lot of guys here, but sooner or later I'm going to get to know all these other guys. So I just kept on, kept the conversation going with Chad. So we enjoyed that. Once I figured out name tags were on that table and I tried to go pick one up, I think I almost got tackled. Like I literally, like somebody was like, no, don't touch the tags. We got it. You can't touch anything. And I was like, wait, what's going on here? But that is the level of servitude that there was from the very minute we walked into WFR church. These guys would not let me, like, probably if I had a nose itch and they saw me do it, there could have been somebody over there catching it. So that was at the church. And then I'll fast forward I will say this. When we got on the bus, Chad sat with somebody else. I sat with a guy that I didn't know. And man, you talk about a start to a retreat. This guy started telling me his story on this bus on the way to the camp. And I shared some of mine, and I'm just like, God is already like moving right now. We haven't even got there yet. I've already been, duck call room, all these things, like that was a blast, but like we're getting into the good stuff, and
That's
I'm
right.
on this bus listening, and hearing and receiving. And I'm just like, man, this is going to be a powerful. I was already like, okay, I better put my seatbelt on. But when we pulled up to the camp, I'm not going to give the specifics of what happen right when we pulled up. But I'm going to say this is what I observed. I had no idea the size of the team that was going to be there waiting for us when we pulled up. I was shocked. I was like, there's no way. There's more than double. We had 40 something campers. I think there was more than double people waiting for us. I could not believe it. So that was my first kind of, point of view.
And I'm going to reiterate the point that Bryan made, is that from the moment that Dad introduced us and we went and got a bite at Freddy's, just the instant chemistry between our personalities and the way we kind of look at life was kind of astounding. It was not what I was, I don't know what I was expecting. Normally, whenever Dad introduces me to somebody new, I do a lot of sitting and listening to figure out where I fit in. And I didn't feel that way with you. Like, we jumped right into it. Now, part of that, I think, is because I had context to your creative side, but that was already just an incredible connection that was made. And that would have, that would not have happened had Dad not been made your prayer partner in all of this. Because I'm pretty sure that's where y'all's relationship started at, if I'm not correct.
It was actually before then, whenever I reached out to him.
Slightly before. Yeah.
Yeah, through his website. Because normally when you do that, you don't get a reply back. And man, it was that same day, I'm pretty sure, that Bryan replied back. And ever since that email, it's just that was the beginning of it. And the next thing you know, we started talking about the WFR men's retreat and his connection with Al, and with just one thing led to another. Next thing I know, he said, "Man, I'd love to go." So, I let him know when the registration was, and it all, just went from there.
So then I'll say that the last time that I did anything, and Zach, Todd, you're Zach, and I shared this in common. The last time that we did anything like getting dropped off at a church or anywhere and going somewhere was before we left for basic, right? Yeah. So part of my interaction with Bryan was out of comfort, because before that I had gotten to spend a couple hours with you, and then this starts happening, and subconsciously, like, or even consciously, like, there was something that I couldn't control in my own brain, body chemistry, spirit, where I was already putting up walls. And I told Dad this. I told Bryan this. I was like, I'm in fight or flight right now. Because the last time that I did this, I went off to basic, and I know how that went. And that was a great time, right? It caused a lot of growth, and it went places, but it's something that you have to put up walls to buffer the sea with. And so a lot of my sort of focus on talking with Bryan is, one, it was easy, and two, I had just spent time with this guy, so I didn't feel like I needed to get out of my comfort zone at a time where I was already kind of uncomfortable. And then Derek McQueen comes into the church, sees me, and beelines to me, and has this big old smile on his face. I get up, doesn't go for a handshake. Like, I met this guy one time. I recorded one podcast with Dad and talked with him for a little bit. That's it. It was like he had known me my whole life off of that one interaction, and he seemed so excited to see me. Just specifically me, into, like, I don't know if it was because it was a familiar face or what it was, but in that moment, he started to kind of break down my walls a little bit. And I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better. I feel a bit more comfortable. And that's why I think I was actually comfortable sitting with somebody else on the bus. And then the bus ride, again, like, I was so invested in the person sitting next to me and asking them questions. And I'm sad that I can't remember the gentleman's name. But that was really one of our last real interactions for the rest of the weekend, just because we ended up on different sides of camp for the majority of it. But the drive there was a blur for me. I don't actually remember. Normally I'm looking out the window when I'm going somewhere, especially if I'm riding somewhere, because I'm like, okay, if I have to get back here on my own, where am I going? Nothing. I remember zero about how to get from WFR to Camp Chioka.
Imagine
Nothing.
that.
I don't even know how long the drive took. Zero recollection of how long we were in that bus. It could have been an hour. It could have been 10 minutes. I don't know. So
it's all part of that intentional. And
then for the sake of not giving too much away,
Mm-hmm.
the welcome party was both incredible and almost overwhelming because it was so different from whatever subconscious expectation I had, being in that sympathetic fight or flight mode, right? So or maybe that was my parasympathetic, but being in that fight or flight mode, and so I'm there and everything's happening, and I'm like, okay,
completely different than the reception you got when you left to go to basic and you got off that bus at basic.
Right. And then, but again, so many things were going on that the first thing that I did was I went and found people that I knew. Like I went and found Burley, and I went and talked to Bryan, Rucker, and a couple of these other guys that I had met through Dad's podcast. And that were kind of a guest and a friend of Dad at that point. That, immediately, if there's two buckets in my brain, and this side is Dad's podcast guests, and this side is people I can derive comfort from, it's like my brain went yoink. like I know these people in the midst of weirdness. I can hold on to this, especially Burley, man. And the way that we got to spend a little bit of time with Burley. So that was a really big deal.
Excellent. Excellent.
So when you guys, so you get off the bus and you go to your cabin and you make your bed, you get settled in, and you come back. Now we can talk. We want to talk about what was going on, but we can't. What I would like to know is when y'all were standing outside and they have those popcorn testimonies outside. I don't care to talk about that. It's nothing special. It's not anything secretive. When you lined up to go inside to eat your first meal of camp, what were your first impressions? How did that impact you without giving too much away?
Bryan, you're
up. Obviously, without any great deal of knowledge of what was getting ready to take place, I was like, what is going on here? But at the same time, kind of excited to see, what we were doing. From the moment we pulled the corner and I saw the reaction of the team, I was like, this is just, going to be high energy and it's going to be surprising probably around every turn. But honestly, man, without giving too much away, this is good. So the same way that I saw, well, even more so, like, where I saw glimpses of like this servitude, at WFR, where these guys were just, everybody, it stepped up a notch, a pretty big notch going into that dinner. I won't go into great detail about, the whole, the dinner and what all was involved, but let me just tell you, the food, possibly it's the best meal I've had in 2024, and I don't think I'm exaggerating. So that's one, one little thing, but the service and the servitude and the love in that room. It was very quickly. I was very quickly, figuring out, even through the, the popcorn testimonies, like kind of getting a feel for like what was going on and kind of who these people were. Like I walk into it. I know a few people that are there from seeing them online or, at the WFR services and things like that. But I started to get a good glimpse of who these men were. And so it was becoming very, very clear that this was going to continue, and there's going to be a lot more happening. But that dinner was amazing, and the experience, the whole thing was really awesome, and it kind of set the tone. I think that dinner set the tone for the rest of the retreat.
100%. That was the you stole the words out of my mouth.
Well, I will say this: kudos to the head over that cook team ministry, because this was for WFR men's retreats. This was the first time I've seen him step up and be in that role. He knocked it out of the park.
And I'm going to make you a little bit jealous here. Due to dietary restrictions, there were some things on the second day that I couldn't eat because I couldn't eat pork, and that's no big secret. They served pork for breakfast and like pork chops for lunch that day, and I don't know who makes up that menu. That could probably change in the next retreat. No, nobody knows. But because I don't eat pork, my wife and I try and eat kosher. I got to eat those leftovers from that first meal every meal all day Saturday, and you would think that would get old, but they were there handing you just plates of it because of how much they over prepared for that, and it's all just as good as it was that first night. It's like, oh man, oh.
So here's something I want to tell you guys. I don't know if you know this, but whenever I went, and probably even when Todd went, when I went was the very first WFR men's retreat. And there were very few WFR men who teamed that retreat. It was from all other churches. And I think a huge portion of that was still going on when Todd went, because Todd went the very next retreat after me.
Yep.
So what I'm seeing for the two that I have teamed now after going back is that with it being, now there were a few guys from other churches, the first one that I teamed, but this one, Todd, it was at least 99% WFR.
I would agree with that. There was
maybe more.
There was
some bounced in and out, but they didn't stay there the whole time.
Yeah, there was bouncing in and out, and great ones to have coming in and visiting and pouring in. But yeah, for the most part, I believe it is. I mean, they have guys from Florida. We're WFR, but we're WFR.
I can, yeah.
Online.
As far as I'm concerned, you're WFR. If you went there to your retreat and you're teaming back, yeah, you're WFR.
Oh yeah, and I
consider me WFR, and you.
And they make you feel that way. They make you feel no other way but WFR.
And the reason where I was going with that real quick, guys, is that I think because of that, there's a camaraderie and there's a connective. It's just like a connective tissue of how your ligaments work in your body or in your joints, that the left hand knows what the right hand's doing. Those guys worship together. They pray together. They're in Bible studies together. They teach each other's kids together, in church together. I mean, there's just they're in tribe together, Bryan. Yeah. Let's put it that way. Bryan likes to use the tribe or brotherhood or however you want to say it. And I think because there is definitely a different feel, and it might be for each one. But this retreat that you guys went on and it was special to me for other reasons that we're going to get into later on towards the end. But for you guys, I just feel like, man, there was something about this retreat that to me, Todd, was just different. And I am so thankful that these two got to experience that.
The word that I've come back to a bunch of times is that when you accept Christ into your life, and you get baptized, that's one major marking. But this is the one that felt like I was indoctrinated in the positive sense of the word into a fraternity that was centered around that same commitment to following Yeshua. That was the where I found was that fraternity word. as far as the first event, two things kind of stood out to me. Again, I by the grace of God, got to sit next to Burley during that dinner, which is great and comforting because I still have my guard up a lot. It was less so, but still, sort of just anticipating of what's next. That basically subsided by the time dinner was over because it's amazing. Like Dad, you talked about this in the podcast with Clay and Josh, right? Or it was discussed in the podcast with Clay and Josh is that when you break bread, it seems like the walls come down. It was you because you were talking about what happens at Todd's whenever you guys go down there, and you guys have a meal together, and then you break open the Word and how the conversation changes. So that was really cool. The other cool part about that part of the event that doesn't spoil anything is I also got to sit with Zach, which Todd, I've met Zach all of one time, and the time that I had met him, I was having to work while I was listening into a conversation at your place. So that was, and he kept trying to invite me over, and I'm like I've got to, I love you, but I'm like following God's calling on my life right now, trying to get everything done that I need to get done. This conversation's great, but this one's for me to listen to, not to speak into. So to get to spend the time to get to know him a little bit more, I learned a lot from him just based on one question that he leveled at me. And I've told you this before, but I'll share it with the audience. And that is, he looked at me directly across the table after having gone around the entire table. And I knew this question was coming. And even when he asked me, I had no answer for it. Looked me dead in the eye and he said, "Chad, who are you?" Well, and I was just dumbfounded. I was dumbstruck. I'm like, I'm over here trying to eat, I've got a mouth half full of food.
Doing your best to avoid it.
Yeah, there's other things happening in the room that I feel like I need to pay attention to. And the first thing that I defaulted to was, and this also told me a lot about Zach, which was, yeah, man, you know who I am. He's like, "No, I don't. My dad's mentioned you all of 2 times and we've met once. I have no idea who you are." It's like, first of all, I blame you, Todd, because you should have told him more about me. I'm so disappointed that you don't talk about me more, Todd. How dare you? But the other side of it was like, wow, I immediately knew that I could trust him because I knew that he was going to shoot me straight no matter what. Whether I was in the right, whether I was in the wrong, whether I agreed with him, whether it made me want to punch him, whatever, right? He's somebody that I knew that I could shoot it straight with, and that was going to shoot me straight no matter what the topic. That was really cool to find out about somebody. It usually takes a while to get people to act like that towards you. And that didn't happen. So I was thankful for that. And the other thing that I was thankful for is I got to, I won't say too much, but I got to realize that you have a creative muscle in you that night. And that was a very fun thing to experience and to learn about Mr. Todd Langdon. And for those of you who would like to know what I'm talking about, you'll have to go to a retreat to find out.
Yes,
So
yes.
That's my teaser for that.
There you go. Which also got exercised a little bit later in the retreat as well.
And that was actually my favorite exercise of said creative muscle. I was blown away. Didn't know you had it in you, sir. So kudos to you.
All right, Bryan. Who was sitting at your table at that meal?
Oh man, you just put me on the spot. So for the audience, at the meal, we had a certain group of guys, and then when we got to our regular tables, we had the same group of guys. So I could name everybody at that table, easy, no problem, boom, 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 because I was with them the whole time. That first night, man, you knew this was coming, right? Why didn't I Chad, we didn't get the answers to the quiz.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you who was.
Brian, I'm going to tell you something. I couldn't tell you who I sat next to.
I don't remember.
Whenever I went.
Yeah.
Chad is lucky because, but not lucky, but fortunate because Burley was there and Zach was there. People he already knew, or he'd be drawing a blank right now too.
Yeah, I do remember. I do though remember Chad, or I remember Zach popping around, and I got to see Zach for the first time. I didn't know it was Zach yet. It wasn't until later that he was kind of. I think he was messing with Chad just a little bit, and then Chad's like, "That's Zach," and so then that's how first. And I'll tell you more about my perspective on Zach later, but yeah, I honestly don't remember. I remember the creative exercises that Chad is talking about, and I remember the food. I remember being blown away by the service. I just remember the whole experience was just off the charts. And yeah, I'm not actually sure. So you got me. You stumped me.
You go to camp and you expect camp food, not
Well,
restaurant quality.
Yeah.
5-star.
It stands out to me because at my retreat, the table I sat at had Randy Kirby and Robert Abels.
Oh.
And for me, I had been back to Whites Ferry Road a handful of times at that point. And the first time that we went post me being baptized was on Easter, and word got around to Paul Stevens, an elder also, that we were there visiting from Florida. He made it his mission to find us, greet us, welcome us, love on us, not having never even set eyes on us. But that's the leadership. That's the heart of the leadership of WFR. And it goes all the way down the ranks.
Yep.
Yeah, I've had one major interaction with Paul, and that's a lasting impact. That's a conversation that though the specifics of I could not recall to you due to the emotions of the moment, but it is a conversation that I will never forget having had. But the kind of relationship that I think that you and Dad have with Paul is the one that I have with Robert. Robert Abels holds a very, very special place in my heart. And Robert, if you're listening to this, thank you for the way that you poured into me, man. That is, I can't wait to see you again. Can't wait to share. Can't wait to talk with you about what I hope to bring to life as a vision that I had on that retreat for One Kingdom. And we'll go from there. But if everything else falls through and all I get is a grandfatherly mentor in my life that just has an uncanny ability to see into people and to trust them and to trust God's plan for them and also speak wisdom at the same time. If that is all I get, then I'm a blessed man beyond what I deserve.
That is completely why he is called Pops.
Yep.
So we move on, and there's a second event, and y'all's brains are already trying to wrap around what you just walked through. Now the second event takes place and takes its course and leads into a night of silence.
Yeah.
Where do y'all land there?
Well, I'm going to be the first to say I was kind of surprised by the night of silence because although it was getting late, so I was okay with it. It was a pretty late night, but after going through that evening and what we saw there and walked through, I mean, humbling. It's always like it, that always just takes me, to a very quiet place anyway. So probably ending in silence was the right way to do that, and kind of let us take that into, the next full day. Because really, for me, while the evening, and this is just my opinion, but while the evening of day one was amazing, honestly, for me, day two was something even better for other reasons that you guys probably know. And that's where I started just getting blown away. So it's like one thing, and then, okay, we did this, and then and we already started like here, and then we just kept going up, in my opinion. So yeah, that's my takeaway.
For a couple of weeks before the retreat, my wife and I had a couple of discussions about how I was processing certain things that were on the horizon for us, certain things that had happened, and certain visions that I have. You guys would never know that I'm a visionary, and that I paint visions, and that I have big ideas, grandiose dreams. That, but at the same time, one of the things that we had discussed was how much in order to achieve those things, I feel like I have either catching up to do, or I just have to consume more information in order to achieve the things that I need to go to. The problem is that we had kind of discovered really the week before the retreat was that I was consuming so much that I wasn't giving myself any time to actually incubate on the things that I was consuming. It was just a constant influx of information and never any time to reflect and come up with any new ideas, to formulate any new hypotheses or perspectives of my own. And as an artist, as a creative, as a writer, as a director, as somebody who wants to be a visionary, who self-describes as a visionary, as prideful as that might come across, that silence fulfilled something that we had already agreed that we needed to do. That I needed to spend more time in quiet contemplation. And so not only did the night set the tone for that, but it was also an immediate, you have no distractions. And you're quiet and contemplative of what you have just experienced that night, which played directly into a direction that through really my wife's wisdom, and feeding into my life, we had kind of come to. And so I was all for it. I equally loved it and hated it at the same time, because it was something that I knew that I needed, and it was a hard thing to do. But once I settled into it, it provided that quality time to reflect. And it's amazing the places that your mind will go whenever you don't have anything to distract yourself with. It's amazing the types of thoughts that you'll come into, and how pure they'll be. I'm a firm believer that the uncomfortable things that we try to avoid by distraction are uncomfortable, not because they are from the enemy, but because they are from God. Usually whenever when we're boys and our fathers speak into our lives, we don't like to listen to them, but even if we know they're right, we can know wholeheartedly that they are correct, and we won't listen anyway. And I feel like it's that same thing. I feel like the voice that we hear in our head when we're under distraction, that's where the enemy can get to us. But it's in those quiet contemplative moments that we're afraid of, for unhealthy reasons. That's where we hear God. So that was it was a great shell shock. It was a great immediate breaking of old habits for me, and a perfect preparation for the transformation that is presented to you, the potential, the opportunity for transformation that happens on the second day.
John, you want to take the second day?
So, excuse me, everybody. I think, and I got to be honest with you guys. For me, my retreat was a blur. I don't know if you guys feel that same way. There's things about it that's just you want to remember. You're like, what happened then?
Well,
Um,
that's design. That's part of the design, but also a downfall, because if you don't have anybody to discuss those things with within a week, then pieces start slipping away, and that's the whole purpose in this discussion. So,
well, and I'll tell people this, they did food table talks, and I don't think that's a secret. I mean, they had people, whenever the guys were eating, there was some of us that they assigned to go around and sit at the tables and get to know the guys. And because things get so intense or can get heavy and intense, during the normal sessions, that when, just like your food, like Chad, you mentioned earlier, and I've got the scripture pulled up here that, I did mention that in that podcast, is that people, I don't know if y'all have noticed this, but man, conversation flows around food. There's just something about when we break bread together, we eat together. So, and as I look back on it now, Todd, I got to be honest with you, man. I think the food table talks to me probably meant more to me than anything, because I remember more from guys sitting down and talking to me when I was eating than I do in the normal sessions for my retreat. And so that's really special to me. So without going into anything, I'll say, both of these guys surrendered some stuff, got some stuff off there, and that's what it's for. It's a time to reflect. It's a time to surrender some things that's in our life that shouldn't be there, and to, and the main thing is the first activity that we did, without telling anybody what it was, after we did the initial and then redistributed, and things were read, were you all shocked at the number of ups and downs of everybody that had same struggles?
Yeah, I would say I was shocked, because so of all the guests, of the 40 something campers that were there, retreatants, I think we use that word, of the 40 something that we had, the differences in ages, in everything, like geographic some, but like there was such a big span of the people, just looking out at the men there. And when you hear the testimonies, although some of the testimonies were different and some of the struggles were different, there were so many overlaps. Literally, I probably had something in every testimony I heard that also impacted me at some point in my life, or is impacting me now.
I shouldn't have been surprised. Doing the psychology thing.
You shouldn't have been, but it completely slapped you.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like I privately in my own time, like I study psychology. I listen to guys like Jordan Peterson. I read Nietzsche. I read Freud, right? Just to understand the flaws and certain perspectives. Like I've taken sociology classes whenever I was still in college, and so the overlaps should have been obvious, and yet we have this magical way of convincing ourselves. And this is one of the great things that first event does, is it breaks down the barriers that we build around ourselves, convincing ourselves that we're the only ones doing this. We're the only ones that are going through this. We're the only ones that experience this. And so I can't tell anybody because they're going to judge me. I am going to be othered because I am the only one that deals with this. As asinine as that is, as stupid as that actually is on the face of it, and we can recognize that idiocy, it's a lie that we all too often and all too openly believe. And so that first event, it completely shatters that framework, so that the idea that you have to keep it to yourself because nobody else knows what you're going through is not an excuse anymore.
Yeah. And I don't want to go backwards. I'm going to stay on this very long, but the day that we're talking about, that first breakfast where John was talking about, we sat down, we did table talks. The person that served me and sat down beside me was the great Pops, Paul Stevens, who I got to meet for the first time. So, I've heard the story of the 5 gospel symbols and how Pastor Bill Smith presented and shared the gospel with Phil Robertson way back decades ago with the simple I guess a visual way to show Phil and explain the gospel to Phil. And so after all of that, knowing that, and then creating these hats and this merch and just kind of seeing that, like, that's a part of WFR and who it's a simple gospel. It's an easy way to share the gospel. They do it so well. And then to sit down with Paul Stevens, who's the son-in-law of Bill Smith, was really cool. It was just sitting by wisdom. I mean, this guy, that kicked off the full day 1, which would be day 2 for me. Mm-hmm. Even shared some of these, which you can't see because I think I got my screen blurred, but these 5 gospel, he gave me some cards. He's like, hey, here's the actual cards I use. Here's, all this stuff he shared with me. So just really cool. And yep. Going from there to what Chad's talking about and kind of seeing, that first event and the first things that we did was powerful. It was just starting to, John kept telling me, hey, it's going to keep getting better. And I was like, no. And it kept on ramping up.
Yeah, man. Like when they say they'll tell you, it's like, oh, it ain't done. It ain't done. You think you're done? It ain't done. And you're like, in the back of your head, after everything that you've gone through, after all of the lives that you're seeing change, after all the opportunities for surrender that are presented through the different events that happen, and the different stories that are told, because ultimately it is a convention of great men telling great stories of redemption, in a multitude of facets, right? If you had to try and boil this thing down to one thing, it's a convention of men telling great stories of redemption. But when they tell you that there's still more, and you're like what, honey buns on the bus back home? Like, there ain't no way, dude. Like, and I want to pause actually just for a second about the 5 gospel symbols, because I want to plug somebody who's had a big impact in my life, and that's a gentleman by the name of Yosef Rashamim Danieli, who is the author of a book that Dad's reading right now called Moses Wrote About Me. And the reason why I bring that up is we were talking about the 5 gospel symbols, and I've been thinking about those a lot because of how long we've been stuck in that fourth symbol, because it seems like all of those events, that the first 3 happen like that, and we're just kind of, or the all 4 of those, right, with God going back up, like, just happen in the blink of an eye. In reality, when you go through the book and you read what Rami has written in this series, where he's embarked on this journey in the last quarter of his life to tell the Gospels in Torah. As a Messianic Jew who loves Torah, who believes that we see Christ in Torah, that journey for me started with Yosef and highlighting that. And so those first 4 symbols on that gospel thing, they might seem like they took all of that much. You guys, this much time. You guys don't get that reference. Anybody who's been to the retreat will get that reference. But what it seems like has only been this much time has really been, right, thousands of years it took us to get through those first 4 symbols, and sure, we're waiting on the 5th to happen, but in retrospect, we haven't really waited as long as nearly as long as what even it might take for us to see that, which is why it's so important that we continue to raise these godly, to create community, disciple each other, become godly men, so that we can raise godly men, so that the generations might have something to look forward to and not despair. So that's
So it's an awesome book. I just got to tell you, I mean, it is worth the read. It is not a hard read, and I've been amazed of how he pulls Christ in from the very beginning in the Garden of Eden. That there's a picture of Christ, and it's amazing. That's not one of those 2 read books or 3 read books. That's one of them 4, 5, 6 read books. And it's not on audiobook yet. Chad's trying to work out a deal to where he can get him to do that. Anyway,
right.
So Todd brought to my attention. That's why I like having him on here. He kind of helps keep me on track. And this has been a great conversation. And I want to keep going, but in order for us to get to where we want to go, to where we want to get to, we're going to have to kind of fast forward a little bit. So before I go into what was going on before the retreat ever happened, because of what happened after the retreat, and Bryan, you're part of that. Chad, Todd, you all are all part of that. If you would, I got to step away real quick for just a second. But if Chad and Bryan, if you all would take 3, 4, 5 minutes, if it even takes that long, and tell the audience if you would recommend this to a friend or a family member, and why.
And take off.
Here we go. So, yeah, I mean, my answer is absolutely. I would recommend it to a friend. The power of the community and Christ followers, like these men, community of men. There's so much. I've seen it in these tribe groups, several tribe groups that are popping up everywhere. There's such a hunger for men sitting around a campfire, sitting around and just digging into God's word. There's such a hunger. There's so many men who are hurting and nobody knows it because they either don't have the community, they're in a siloed, situation. They're not in church, they're not serving, or they just are just too scared to let anybody in on it, let them know. So because of that, there's a hunger for what happened this last weekend at the retreat and what is happening twice a year for the men there. And so I absolutely recommend any man to go and attend this. If you haven't, in fact, I met with a guy this morning. I've already talked to him. His wife knows Brian Rucker. His wife went to Sadie Robertson's conference this weekend.
Excellent.
So she was excited. I had some 5 gospel symbols, women's hats, and she's like, I want to wear some of these to the conference. But anyhow, I've talked to her husband. They don't live far from us. And we actually had coffee this morning when I dropped those hats off. And he's already told me, I want to go. So I've already got one signed up.
There's one.
So to answer the question, would you recommend this to a friend? I already have. And my buddy Matt has said yes. So barring the fact that he is on a movie at the time, because he works in the same crazy industry that I do, barring work, there's a good chance that if he gets in, because that's the other thing is when registration opens up, you got to kind of jump on it because it fills up quick. It's changing lives and
well, here's the thing about that was the way it was done originally, but now they leave the registration open all day the day that registration is open. They close it And as you register, numbers are assigned to the names. The numbers go into a mixing wheel and they're drawn. They start praying over the numbers as soon as the numbers go in, and they pull the numbers.
So it's a lottery system now.
Entirely.
Huh.
Cast lots. The same way they casted lots for the garments.
Yep.
No different.
Interesting.
It's all, from before y'all knew anything, y'all were being prayed for months and months ahead of time in empty prayer for men that were only known to God. Start softening their hearts, start preparing their minds to be in this place.
That's cool. So the short answer is yes, because I already have. But the long answer is, to Brian's point, there is this desire, especially like we moved away from West Virginia whenever I was young. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. And because I was a West Virginia boy, and also because of my interests being not just sports and mechanical like boys like to be into, but it's also really creative. I was into theater and everything like that. I had my nose stuck in a book all the time. I was into video games. I was into anime. I'm still into all of those things. I never had a tribe that I fit into because none of the tribes wanted me because I didn't fit their pre-described box, right? I didn't fit any one specific mold. And so my whole life, I feel like there's been this desire for a tribe that I've never had the privilege of experiencing, really, until this past weekend, right? That's one of the reasons, even before we went into the weekend, but that's one of the reasons why I feel like I kind of latched on to Bryan and to Utah and to Zach in the way that I did, and to some of the other guys that were there. We found that fraternity in a way that we didn't. And so there are people that are out there that are a part of a friend group, or that I consider to be my brothers, that I want inculcated into this tribe as well. Absolutely. I want them to be a part of this thing. This thing is so much bigger than any one of the individuals that goes to it. The transformations, the rededications, the surrender, like you guys said, is so necessary. It really does feel like it is a necessary next step in your walk and in your faith. After baptism, to anything that I'm aware of, there's nothing biblical about it. So I dare not say that it's biblical that you need to do this in the same way that you get baptized, but it feels that important. Once you go through it, it feels that the gravity of what you have experienced and the bonds, the strength of the bonds that you have created with the men that you went through it with, and for those that served you while you were there.
I'll give you something to take into that quiet place of contemplation. So you ready on this? I witnessed this same brotherhood pouring itself all over you in the trip to do live podcasting in December. And you were so focused in on the work and the background work that was still taking place that you missed the opportunity. But the men that were doing it were so intentional. It started then, preparing your mind and your heart for now. That and you know exactly the man that I'm talking about. And I'll leave it right there. Just think on that. Mm-hmm. John, where were you going next?
So I don't know if y'all know this or not, but real quick, I'm going to give you a little bit of mine and Todd's background. So JJ was and amazing. That's who he was just talking about, Chad. Was my prayer partner when I went. He was Todd's table leader when he went. JJ told Todd, because JJ, man, community trying to find somebody. It reminds me a lot of the guy that you're talking to, Bryan, that's up in Indiana, not Kentucky. So
Amazing man. Amazing man.
yeah, he is. And my heart goes out to him because Todd knows my heart and where I was. So Todd reached out. Actually, did I reach out to you first? Facebook, how somehow we got
it was a Facebook deal.
Yeah, either way. So Todd went through a situation. Understandable. We'll talk about if you want to know what it is, go listen to his testimony and you'll know it.
Yep.
So he got off of social media and he said, John, I'm off social media. Here's my number. I don't know if we may have texted once or twice, but the next thing I know, Todd gives me a call. He says, hey, man, you want to meet at Dunkin' Donuts? I said, yeah, let's meet halfway. Well, we didn't meet halfway. I met a quarter of the way. He met 3/4 of the way. And I wasn't happy about that.
In true Todd fashion.
Yep. So we met there at Dunkin' Donuts and, 6 minutes. No, it was 6 hours later. And then we met again at Five Guys after that. And then next thing you know, he's invited me down. I'm going down and visiting with his, Chad, what you experienced down there with his men's group. And I go early.
Well, let's give credit there where credit's due. That's a God's built group.
Yes.
I facilitate.
Right.
That's it.
Right. Well, the God's group, the Todd orchestrated.
You also cook, right? As we learned in Josh's in the last podcast, how do you cut a brisket? Doesn't matter how you cut a freaking brisket, right? Discipleship have okay, Mr. Chef.
Yep.
It's not about the brisket,
Nope.
but the brisket helps, right?
It's about the time spent in fellowship.
Yep. But and it's amazing how people show up and you tell them you're going to feed them.
Funny how that works out.
Yeah, that they do show up when you tell them you're going to feed them for sure. So anyway,
you were going somewhere, John.
Where were we?
My lunch has started.
His trips
just before you came back to team the first time.
So anyway, we were talking about would you invite somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that through that, you guys will find your community. Chad, you've got, I think you get your guys to this, and I think it not only will it transform their lives, it'll transform your all's relationships, and it's going to transform the business that you all do together.
Exactly.
And Bryan, I'm looking forward to you and Chad getting to spend some time together when he comes to Houston. It's going to be great that he knows somebody there. Hopefully he can get you and Angie out to the movie set and let you guys see how some of that goes on.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him on camera.
Yeah. So I want to tell you a little bit how some of this came together. And I'm going to try to do this pretty quick. I hate to rush it, but there'll be more of a video coming out about the last part of what we're going to talk about. So
you've been alluding for that, alluding. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming.
I'm holding on to them this much. So anyway, I'd had it on my mind for a long time, guys, but I wouldn't. I told y'all about it. Everybody else, Todd and I did a little bit of a small video about why I wouldn't be baptized and why I put it off. But I finally went to Todd and I said, look, man, have you ever baptized anybody? And he said, no, I've been part of one. But I said, I'd like for you and Burley to baptize me. Will you reach out to Burley? And so from the time that, then through that, then Bryan and I meet. Burley says yes. Next thing I know, Burley, we're in a 3-person text message every day. Burley's sending scripture, and it's building up to when Christ, to Christ's death, burial, and resurrection, and the meaning of what baptism is about. And so through that, then I'm talking to Bryan. I said, man, if you're going to be there, I said, I'm being baptized in Ouachita. I don't know where. I said, Burley and Todd's doing it, and I'd like for you to be there. like share. He said, well, John, since you mentioned it, I've been thinking about it myself.
Story. Right.
So I said, well, let me reach out. And Todd and Burley said, yeah, the more the merrier, bring it on. And I was tickled to death to be able to share that. And I had no idea where we were going. Not until a few days before we actually went. And I told Todd, I said, I'm glad you told me, because I'd have been an emotional mess if I rolled up to that gate and knowing at that point where I'm going. I don't know. I'd have probably just been an emotional basket case.
Well, I'll go ahead and tell you, I'd fought it tooth and nail to hold it until, but I also know the background, and that's why I couldn't.
Yeah, and so just so you guys know, I don't know if you guys know Chad and Bryan. 3 years ago, I believe God put this on my heart and showed me that's where that was supposed to be. I didn't know Todd. I didn't know JJ. I didn't know anybody. I had no idea.
No community.
Okay, if that's what you want. And I think I told you all a little bit about this while we were down there. But I had no idea how that was going to happen. And then last December, when we were at JJ's filming what Todd was talking about, Chad was so busy and with everything that was going on, there was some wonderful, tremendous men of God there. I was dealing with it then. But anyway, just as how things work, I wanted it to be private. I wasn't, because I didn't want to look. I was out there, beating my chest and then I thought, well, John, if you're wanting to get rid of the embarrassment and the feeling of failure and the disgrace that you feel, well, then maybe somebody ought to be watching. Maybe somebody else ought to be part of this too. And so when I was down at Todd's last time, I asked Zach and Hunter, I said, man, I'd love for y'all to be there. I said, I didn't realize y'all come too, please. And so they were there, and I wasn't at that time when we started all this, I didn't know Chad was going to be going either. And I didn't know Bryan, we hadn't really met. When I started this process, none of this had happened yet.
None of the moving pieces were in place.
No. And so we had asked some of the guys that I'm pretty close to, which it was, again, Labor Day weekend. But I think the people who were supposed to be there were there.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to tell you why I think Brent Acord was there. I thought Brent was going to be baptized too, but Brent wants his kids to be there. And this has been on his heart for a long, long time. And Bryan, you and I played a huge role in that man's life through being obedient and doing what we've done that's given him the encouragement to do it himself. And so Brent took these pictures so that everybody
on what we're talking about.
Yeah. So when we got there, I had no idea this was going to happen. Next thing I know, Phil Robertson's walking down. We're on Phil's boat dock. And that's what I've been alluding to everybody. Todd surprised me. He said, hey, we're going to Phil's boat dock. And I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, we're going to the boat dock and we're going to put, we're going to do it in the Ouachita. And I'm like, holy cow. I had no idea. Honestly, I felt like this is what God had put on my heart 3 years ago. So Phil comes down and he shares the word, man. It was awesome. And I made a note here to make sure that I didn't forget to talk about this. Chad has all this on film, guys. So once he can bypass the crunchy gravel in the audio, which I think all plays into it, we might get it in 3 years. No, I'm just joking, Chad. So, but he walked around with the gimbal and he got this. And two, Bryan, I'm going to need you to do me a favor and reach out to Al and let him know the video that we've got of his dad and make sure it's okay that we release that. And I don't have any way of getting him. I don't think Phil will have any trouble with it or any of it. There's nothing on there that would do anything. And we're not making any money off of it.
Whenever it's together, we'll get it to you, Bryan, and you can share it with Al and get all the thumbs ups that are required and all the approvals, and then it can come out here at Let's Talk Fortitude.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we do the right thing by that
Guys,
family.
I've got to step away for a second.
Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, it's going to be a process, not just because I want to do it right, do it justice, and everything like that, but also just because of the awesome things that God has placed in my life. I get to, I haven't been on a movie set. Well, I take that back. I've been very blessed to have very short stints acting in movie sets, but I have not crewed or been a part of a major production or a consistent production since January, which means that I've gone almost 8 months without consistent film work. And I finally get to get back in on film set starting week after next from when we're recording this. When you guys see this, I will have arrived and I'll be hitting the ground running, burning rubber in Houston, like Dad mentioned before, and finding time on the weekends to go and hang out with Bryan.
So in this picture, everybody, that's my flip-flop. The other one is in the bottom of the Ouachita River stuck in the mud. And listen, Burley stands what, guys? About 6'3".
Yeah.
He's a big man, 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah.
It's 6'2", 6'3". Yeah. Sure.
And Todd is on high ground here.
Yeah. Todd is.
He's not that much taller than Burley.
Yeah.
And Bryan's a big man. Bryan, what, you 6'1"?
I'm almost 6. I'm about Burley. It looked like in our pictures at WFR, we were pretty close, about 6'2.5". So
I was going to say, because you're definitely taller than I am.
Yeah. I'm standing on a high spot there too. I'm not yet down fully in the mud like I will be in the next.
And we got a video of this too. And the one that I hate that we didn't get Bryan in on is this one. This is one I hate that we didn't get Bryan in on.
Yeah, man, I wish you'd have been in on that for sure. It doesn't feel right without you.
It doesn't feel right. I hate to even show it without Bryan being in there.
I have the picture. It's right here. As long as I have.
He's like mentally.
It's like a mental Polaroid. So I'm good.
You're like,
and here's the thing.
You're just like photoshopping yourself into it in your mind's eye.
I'll just use some AI and
And here's the thing that Chad and I, Bryan, that we talked about on the way home after this was over with, or back to the hotel.
Yeah.
Is Phil didn't just come down there and read a few Bible verses and then leave, pray over and leave. He stayed there.
Yeah.
But he wasn't, he stepped away kind of in the woods by a tree and observed and watched everything that was going on. And when it was over, then he come back down and prayed over us again. Yeah. And then he walked back up with Burley. Yeah. I was amazed because he could have just come down and read a few Bible verses and walked home, but he didn't do that.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that. Him coming out. I mean, the first time I've seen him in person, Phil, Miss Kay, Al, and Lisa came down to Fort Worth for the opening of the Blind, and I was able to be in the theater that they were going to be in, which was cool. I didn't get to talk to Al, but just for a couple of minutes because he was like they were signing autographs and doing things, and like they were in and out. But when we were sitting, when me and my wife were sitting in the theater and we we're kind of waiting, we're getting excited. Here comes Phil, here comes, Miss Kay, like the whole crew comes around the corner in the theater. And I've actually got this on video because I feel like it's timeless. And it's Phil Robertson every single time he is in public or he's in front of people or he's in a small group. It doesn't matter. He was sharing the gospel. He literally in 5 minutes just shared the gospel to this whole crowd of people at the Blind, and it was powerful because when we were behind his house last Saturday night, he did the same thing. Like that is him. That is, if anybody is like, well, I'm not, that is Phil Robertson. He is going to do it until the day he goes on. Like that is Phil. And so it's one of the most powerful things, like with him, just only having a couple of chances within a couple of feet proximity, but that's him all the time. And for me, again, we talk about this and we're here today we're here today. You and I are here talking because you saw a hat, a 5 gospel symbols hat that Al mentioned on the Unashamed podcast. None of which any of this conversation would be possible if Phil hadn't have said yes when Pastor Bill Smith shared the gospel with us.
So we got to back up even further than that.
Yeah.
Yep.
To Jan.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no doubt. His sister, like that, she was the one that basically prophesied that if
he's going to bring thousands,
comes to the Lord,
she undershot that one.
Tens of thousands, millions of people, right? Or Christ, God would work through him to reach a ton of people, and that is exactly what has happened. So I didn't get lost in the moment too much. They're just, everybody's so humble, like from the whole WFR retreat, everything. But it was a powerful moment when he came out. No questions asked. Nobody asked him. Burley didn't ask him, hey, come out and share the gospel. Come out and pray with these guys. No, he knew we were going to be there, and he came out and he sat down and he just opened that Bible and shared the word.
I'll go ahead and tell you, the way he sat down, I'd still be crippled.
Yeah, I would too. I would.
Well, I'm going to show everybody what Todd's talking about. I don't know if they noticed it, but he sat like that for how long? 5-10 minutes?
Yeah.
Easy. Yeah. Yep.
Because I had a hard time getting up from where I was. And Todd, if I'd have sat down like you did, y'all had went and got a sky hook and got me up. But he sat like that, and so like you, Bryan, I really didn't get wrapped up in the moment. What I got wrapped up in, and I was so humbled by, I was like you. He took the time to walk down there. He didn't have to do that. He knew Burley could tell us about the gospel and make sure, that we knew what we were doing and we understood the power of that.
Yep.
But he took that time, and like I said, he could have done what he done, got up from that stump where he was at, and walked back to the house with Miss Kay and said, see y'all later. Glad you're here. He didn't do that. He stood off to the side in the woods against a tree, away from everything, away from everything. He didn't want to be in the limelight. And he stepped away to me to say, this ain't about me.
Yeah.
This was about these two gentlemen here and their commitment to Christ.
That's right.
But just think about this, Todd, or everybody. Think about
Todd. You need to think about this.
What that meant, because I'm getting excited about this. Think about the impact that moment had on our kids. Yeah. Chad, Zach, Hunter, this younger generation, to have such a huge godly icon to come down and humble himself like that and do what he did. And in the
manner he did it.
It was total humility. It was like the man didn't have a pot to pee in, pardon my French.
Well, here's the other thing that I thought was even more telling about the character of the man. It could have been taken in a very wrong way that I had a camera out, because it could seem like if you were going to take it in the worst possible way, you could view that as we used Burley so that we could get some video footage of Phil. That's not why I had my camera out there. I had my camera there to help you tell your story, to help you tell your testimony, for you to use this as your ministry and to share this act of obedience with your followership and with the people that might come to Christ through these conversations or might be helped along their journey with that. And he, instead of taking it that way, as a lot of people with an ego could have, oh, you brought a camera just so that you could get me. He didn't even acknowledge. He
never blinked an eye.
He never acknowledged it was there. He never, I was circling around, and you guys will see it on the footage and everything like that about sort of where I was and what I was trying to do. And never didn't say anything. It would have been so easy for him to ask us to put it away. Even if he was being nice about it, he could have asked us to put it away until he was done with his part. And I still would have popped it back out and got your baptism. But he didn't care. Did not bother him in the least that I had a camera, and he at no point seemed like he thought that we were there to try and get him on video. It's a blessing that we did. the way that he has from afar and now in person a couple feet away poured into your life, my life now, Bryan's life, Todd's life, the way that he poured into Burley, who without we wouldn't be there, and the way that Burley is poured into you guys. That's the example that I saw, and the fact that he didn't think twice about it.
That is discipleship. That is
Yeah.
when you talk about disciple, that is the absolute to the nth degree of what discipleship looks like.
Yeah.
And Burley didn't pick up the phone and said, "Hey, Phil, put your waders on. We're going to the river."
No.
He, Phil, we're coming down to baptize some guys, just to let him know we were rolling in there, not to come down there with these AR on us.
Yeah. That's
but Burley's got he knows the code to get in. So anyway, but just think how I got thinking about this too, because Burley is a disciple of Phil.
Yep.
And or I feel that he is. I mean, I could be
Christ's
wrong.
disciple that has been poured into by Phil.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for Phil to see Burley walking in those footsteps now that was Burley that brought us down there to the river. It's, that is passing on now. And what I'm hoping is that someday will pass on to my son or my sons. And that'll pass on to Zach, and that'll pass on to Hunter, and that'll pass on to Bryan's kids as we carry on and not let this thing die.
Yeah.
Or not. I got to be careful not to get worried about going back into the desert again and just focus. If I focus on my relationship with Jesus Christ and stay close to him, that's not going to happen again.
Yep.
Yeah. I agree.
But Bryan and I talked about this. There's been a piece about me, and I told Chad when we left there, I don't know. I know that water is, listen, that water was
Water
dirty.
is
brother.
water the world round. It don't matter.
And that water was dirty.
Compared to what I work with every day, it wasn't bad.
But anyway, and Bryan, you said the same thing, that there was just a peace.
Yeah.
And listen, I don't know, man. It's to me this time it's different.
Yeah.
It's just even man, my whole attitude, everything is.
Yeah. It's not it. It has nothing to do with it as being anything specifically about this event. It's the state of your heart is what I see. And you are in a different place of spiritual maturity than I have ever seen you in. And I walked
surrendered in obedience changes everything.
Yeah. It's a heart thing. What's different is inside of you, and what God has done inside of you it has very little to do with the Ouachita. It has very little to do. And even though those symbolic messages and how, as I've mentioned to you before, I will go into it now, but how I've mentioned to you before, the cyclical repetition of that and the symbology of that and how it echoes that which has happened previously that is written of in the good book. Those things are what makes this different, because those symbologies align with the change that has happened in your heart, which aligns with the doctrine that you believe in, which is what inspired that change in your heart in the first place. So it's this constant spiral of things that are all in alignment with each other in a way that you've never had before. And that, I think, is where we find the core of truth. So often we get led astray even when we think we're acting in obedience. And when it's not true, we can sense it. Well, and I think that this is that truth.
It also goes, there's two scriptures that come immediately to mind when you were talking. And Romans 12, 1 and 2, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Then
Amen.
The other one is Jeremiah 33:3 at 33 2 and 3. This is what the Lord says. And this is Lord, all caps. So we're talking about Yahweh, the one that spoke everything into existence.
Mm-hmm.
He who made the earth, the Lord who formed it and established it. The Lord is his name. He called to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. And this whole course of events leading up, that scripture has been etched in my mind. Call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things that you do not know.
Amen.
And the course of the events, there's no way anybody could sit down with a pen and write out the course of events that took place.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that y'all were there.
Yeah.
So, Chad, the scripture that I used, that I didn't really quote it, but about in the podcast, let me put that up here. Bryan took this. We're getting ready to wrap this up, guys. I'll get y'all out of here. Bryan took this picture. This is when we shot with Clay and Josh. And then Luke 24, 30, 31, we talked about this. And this used to be one of my favorite sermons to preach when I was a pastor. And it says, 24:30 says, and it came to pass as he sat at meat. Now, this is after he had come back, after he was resurrected from the grave, and he was walking, but he didn't identify himself. He kept himself secret or hid from the ones he was walking with. He said he sat at meat with them, his disciples, and he took bread and blessed it and brake it. So he broke the bread and gave it to them. And it says, and their eyes were opened. So I wonder how many times they sat down and watched him break bread over the time that they walked this earth with him. And as soon as he broke that bread, it was when their eyes were open. Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like, to be honest with you guys, when that happened Saturday evening, it was like I really and truly, God was there and really and truly broke bread with us. And that's, it's just there's just something different about it. And I know it's nothing about the water. It's nothing about who baptizes. It's about the relationship that Bryan and I, that step of obedience that we took in what we've done. And I can't think of any 7 guys that I would have rather, actually counting Brent and his wife, I guess it'd been 9 of us that I'd rather, shared it with at that point in time. Mm-hmm. And which I would love it if Ev would have been there, but at the same time, it happened the way it happened for a reason. And I'm so thankful for the relationship that I have with you guys, with all of you. And I went out on a limb, and it was a thin limb to get Chad in and surprise him. And there's a story behind all that we'll do later, from the time that I handed him the phone, the things that were going on in Chad's life, and we don't have near enough time to dig into that right now. But Bryan, I hope you'll come back.
Now that we've held him on here for this long,
I will. I'm gonna team. I'll be teaming in the spring. I'm definitely gonna be on the team this time. I do have one verse to finish up.
Okay, go ahead.
Got something on my mind. So, there's a lot of guys asking, how can we keep these same rhythms? They're in these chats, we're in these group meetings, and they're saying, how can we just keep this going? And there's a lot of practical things we can do, right? But I wanted to take it back to scripture. So one of my favorite hymns back in the day was Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. Shane and Shane have a fantastic version of that song.
Yes.
But Hebrews 12 says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God.
Amen.
Amen.
Hey, will you come back on the podcast?
You know it.
Hey, all right.
Oh, man, you stuck with me now.
Good. I can't
I'll be
think
a
of
third wheel every so often. I'll pop in. I'll be a third wheel.
Hey,
Excellent.
listen, you'll be the first wheel. I'll be the third wheel. I'm the
know,
fifth
and we
wheel.
know from time to time, as Chad can, he'll be in. So that's excellent.
And I can't wait for y'all to get a chance to spend some time together without having a bunch of people around you, and y'all can actually sit down and fellowship and talk and share. And I think that's going to be very special too, man. I look forward to that. Hey, before we get out of here, I just want to do this.
Well, before you close this out, finally, I would like to. Yeah, no, just final, not as in like I didn't mean it like that.
An hour and 30 minutes of your life you'll never get back.
No, dude, I sit and I listen to all kinds of 3-hour podcasts. That doesn't bother me. That's not what I meant. Before the finale. There you go. How about that?
Now you know why I want to do this on Friday and not Thursday.
Yep.
Before you close this out with the finale, a lot of people don't know this, but this has kind of been one of those godly, symbolic, indicative things. For years and years and years, you've said that you've been in the desert. And my wife and I, when we were trying to figure out sort of eventually when we structured our own sort of 501c3 ministry, because we want to eventually, what will we call it? And we decided to call it Bamidbar, after one of our favorite songs by Solo Israel. Bamidbar is the name of the book of Numbers in Hebrew, and it literally translates to in the desert. So in honor of that, I'm going to take a piece from Clay McConnell and read from you guys from Numbers 6 and give you guys the Aaronic blessing. So the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom.
Amen. Shalom. Hey, everybody. Chad's got a lot going on with his short film and he's releasing one. And Chad, real quick, give us 60 seconds of what's happening with the kite and how people can tune in.
Yeah, so we just had, by the time you guys see this, we'll have just had the live stream. That is still going to be up and available on YouTube. So if you want to check out the entire live stream thing, you can. If you want to just watch the short film itself, it's a fantastic story of fatherhood and sonhood and pouring into each other during hard times. It's a very real story. It's a true story. You can go to Forerunner Productions YouTube channel. If you're watching this, you're already here. Just click the thing down below and go to the channel. You'll be able to find it. We'll have it posted there. And then in October, we'll have our second short film with a live stream. You can check out all of the Forerunner Productions for the exact dates. The dates are floating right now, but we will have exact dates being released. In October, we'll be releasing a show called The Pawn Shop, and the trailer for that will be live on the channel as well. If you want to check out what the trailer looks like, have at it. We showed the trailer at the end of the live stream, so make sure that you guys go over there. It's all here. It's all on the same channel. It's all in the Forerunner Productions apparatus. It's all part of the Forerunner Productions family. The tones might shift. The content might shift a little bit, but we make a commitment to be excellent. And excellence means also following in what we know to be true and striving after truth. That doesn't always mean that it's comfortable. It doesn't always mean that it's something that we particularly enjoy or some of the things that we share that we're intentionally trying to glorify negative things. But our goal is to bring you stories that are true and that are excellent. And both with the kite and with the pawn shop coming up, we believe we found excellence and truth in both of those.
ForerunnerProductions.locals.com, ForerunnerProductions.com, Forerunner Productions on YouTube, and that's where you'll find there's all kinds of stuff on there, but just click the playlist, look for Let's Talk Fortitude. And
give us a like, subscribe, share. By all means, share with friends. Get this out, get it in the algorithm, get it up, get the viewership up.
Yep.
Yeah, if you really love us, you can go over to forerunnerproductions.locals.com, but it is so much more helpful that when you share it and you help us with the grassroots marketing.
That's right.
Because your recommendation, your endorsement of the stuff that we're making here goes so much farther than any dollars that we spend on any kind of marketing. Because people who you tell trust you. And they might not watch it tomorrow. They might not watch it this month or this year, but they'll remember the fact that you recommended it to them when it comes across their feed as a recommendation. And that's really what helps. And this stuff.
611armory.com, 611armory.com. Go support a veteran and a Christian.
That's right.
Bryan has some wonderful stuff on his podcast. He's teaming with us. You can find the Let's Talk Fortitude shirt on there, the hat to come. Now, the one, like I said, the one that I have on is a limited time edition. We have 12 of those. And if you're interested in one, you can email Bryan. I know that he answers them because he answered mine. If they're not up on there yet, just reach out to Bryan and he'll get it. But listen, go support this man. What he's doing is fantastic. And he has a heart for Jesus, and he's a wonderful family man. These are the type of people we want to support.
That's right.
And to give our money to and get out there. He is teaming with us. He didn't know us from Adam, and he followed his heart and his discernment. And here we are today. And man, all of us, all four of us or the three of us, Bryan, we feel like you're a brother, and we've known you our whole life, and we're so thankful that you're part of what we're doing. And it's just an amazing partnership, and we can't wait to see what happens in the future.
And it's not just Let's Talk Fortitude. Bryan and I have had some discussions. We're going to be doing some merchandise runs with 611 Armory for Forerunner production stuff and some of the short films that we're doing, some film inspired gear. So keep an eye out for that whenever those start to drop. With Bryan, dude, you're one of the most creative guys when it comes to these things. Like Dad said, the way that you crank these things out and the way that your brain, like, I know it doesn't seem like much to you, but you just have a natural eye for it. And I'm so blessed that not only were we able to meet, but that we are aligned in our visions for things. So thank you. And thank you for what you're doing for Forerunner.
Excellent.
All right. I'm going to get us out of here.